Uh-oh. Rockets! Take cover!
What's good, internet? Faded Gamer here, and I'm back with a review for the new Spider-Man game that just came out for the PlayStation 4 about a week ago. I've gotta say, in one word, it's amazing. But I am gonna get a little more detailed in this video. It'll be the first review video I do on this channel. I should have started off by saying I just really enjoyed this game. A lot like the new God of War that just came out. That's a little different because for that God of War, I've been a fan since the beginning of the God of War series, and I wanted to enjoy that as a gamer, and I decided not to make a video on that one. But for this one, it's a little bit different. I enjoyed it, and I've known Spider-Man for so long, but I think that's kind of the reason why I want to talk about it, is because it brings back so many nostalgic feelings for me, like when I used to read certain comic books by Spider-Man. I didn't read all of them, but I've read a lot of them. And also watching different like cartoons, like the different Spider-Man cartoons. I've followed the majority of the 1990s cartoons, Spider-Man cartoon, and a couple of the newer ones, but mainly the 1990s one. And also brings me back to the feelings of the first Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movies. It gave me those feelings, like nostalgic feeling, and it was really awesome. And one of the things I like about Spider-Man is like, well, what they got right in this video game is the duality to him. Like there's Spider-Man and there's Peter Parker. And Peter Parker, he has bills. Like he has to struggle with paying those bills and being a superhero. Not unlike Tony Stark or like Bruce Wayne, who have like vast amounts of money and they can easily deal with the financial cost of being a superhero. It's a little bit different for him, because I think that's what makes Spider-Man more relatable to us other than other superheroes, and that's why I think he's one of the most popular, is because he has to deal with that. Even like this Spider-Man who's been doing this, even Peter Parker in this game who's been Spider-Man for the last 8 years, still has to struggle with bills and stuff, because even though he's got down the superhero part down, there's still a struggle because he isn't rich, he isn't a billionaire, he doesn't work for the government like Captain America or some other superheroes. He has to do this all on his own, on his wit and on his own pocketbook, which isn't big. But that's cool though. And the other aspect I gotta say about Peter Parker in this game is, and the developers got down, was the fact that he's a good person. Like they really display that, and it comes a lot from his uncle and the guilt he had for not being able to save him. Like it drives him to make that choice, because he understands sometimes the consequences for not doing the right thing can be really bad. And I mean, like I think that's what makes him, that's one of his motives and one of his mantras is really. And speaking about motives, that's one of the things for the villains in this game as well. Like the developers, they've got it down with the motives for the villains as well. Although Dr. Octopus is the most fleshed out of all of the villains, I would have to say they got all of the villains down really well. Like their connections to Spider-Man, because one of the reasons, because Spider-Man has a lot of famous villains and has a lot of villains in general, it's just the more famous ones tend to have connections to him, and I think that's one of the reasons why that people get drawn to those villains, because a lot of times it's like Dr. Octopus in this game, for instance, like he started off as Peter's mentor and stuff like that, and then like although the arms and the thing didn't, and that thing he stuck to his brain didn't really change him, it just made his anger more powerful, but it was already there. It's a little bit more believable, because like it's like, oh, you have a sense of like you get why he's doing this, and like even though you may not completely agree with him, and he's still a villain for doing this, because he ends up releasing a virus into the city at a certain point in the game. Like I mean, there's a level of, like, I want to say, sympathy you can give for him, but definitely he is a villain, and that they make it clear by the certain choices in the game. And as for the other villains, they're not as fleshed out, but you do, as you play the game, you get little like tidbits of information about their history and their history with Spider-Man as you play through the game, especially with certain missions. Certain missions will give you a lot more than others, but if you play through the games, you'll get in the form of Easter eggs and little quips that Spider-Man says throughout the game. Like I think that's one of the main things that makes this game awesome too, is like when you're web slinging, or where you're fighting crime, or you're just looking for the different collectibles, he'll every now and then speak up and say something, because that's how Spider-Man is. He he likes the inner monologue a lot, and also like the addition of J. Jonah Jameson with his little podcast / radio thing going on. It's classic, and it also indicates to me that the developers didn't just do a very good job in making this game, but are also very big comic book fans, possibly even bigger than myself. And I wouldn't say I'm like a super nerd on it, but I gotta say they've thrown in a lot of shout outs to the comics, and not only just to the comics, but to the Spider-Man cartoons, and to the Tobey Maguire movies, the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man movies, and also the Tom Holland movies. It's like they've found a way to fuse a whole bunch of different aspects from every part of the Spider-Man franchise into this video game. It's awesome, and and not only that, they built it in a way that this is their own, like as if this is like their way of saying this is how we would make our Spider-Man movie. And this is interesting, and not gonna lie, they do take they take risks at certain points in the game, and whether or not you agree, I can see why some people wouldn't agree with it. I mean, I wouldn't say it was. I like to think it's a little cheap, but I think really why I say that is because I'm more hurt by certain changes they did with certain characters towards the end. But I'm still interested and invested to see what happens next. I'm willing, I'm waiting, and I'm going to get the DLC, of course, whether I pre-order it or not. I'm going to get the DLC, and I have a theory that if, like, I've seen a couple of like sales statistics or like some articles about the statistics coming out of the UK, like it's breaking records. It's now the fastest like PlayStation 4 selling game there, or something like that. And if things like persist like that in America, and like once more reports come out for sales, if that continues, then we're probably going to have DLC, because they have DLCs planned for the rest of this year, but they definitely are probably going to do more DLC for the rest of next year too, if this popular trend for Spider-Man continues. Because I gotta say, this game is really fun, and like I could swing around this open city, because essentially what this game is, the mechanics is, the formula is, you go around, you swing around the city, and you fight crimes, and you do missions and side quests, and you pick collectibles and stuff like that. And they even say it too during the many interviews before the game came out, that they had to get the web slinging down, because that's one of the most important things for a Spider-Man game, and they're glad to say they got it down. They got it down well, and I'm really happy about that, because I could spend hours just web slinging, not even doing any of the crimes, which I always almost do. I could just web sling for hours and not get bored of it. And like, what's funny was, like, I would barely use the fast travel system in the game, and when I do, I was surprised to see those little loading screens / like cinematics where you see Spider-Man just chilling on the subway, and it's interesting to see how the citizens of New York City treat Spider-Man, react to him. Like, it's like some of them are like, "Hey, it's Spider-Man," and it's like it's a normal thing to happen. Like, you see him on the subway, or some people are just looking at him like, "Is that the real Spider-Man, or is it him? It's interesting." And what I also liked about that, the loading screens for the fast travel, is at a certain point in the game, the city changes up, because like there's like, after, like I said before, like Dr. Octopus releases a virus in the game, and that kind of that puts the city on like a lockdown, like a Gotham City mode, like where it's quarantined off, and like the cops are basically have a lot of trouble. People from the comics from the raft break out somehow and get loose in the city, so they quarantine off the city. So it's now like a lot more. It's like how like anarchy mode and stuff, and you have the comics shooting at you, and you also have like Sable agents that Norman Osborn hires. So they start shooting at you too. So you're basically fighting a whole bunch of people, and now the Sable agents are looking for you. What's interesting about that is, if you do the fast travel while the city's like that, you'll get treated to another loading screen cutscene thing, where you'll see Spider-Man on the outside of the subway track as it's moving along, and you see the Sable agents on the inside just walking around in the subway car, while the Spider-Man just on the outside with his cell phone just looking up, just surfing the web or something. And it's like little details like that tells me that these guys that built this game not only really care about the Spider-Man franchise, but are also looking to put more into it. They've gone the extra mile for detail. And speaking of detail, when it comes to My favorite things about this game, I want to get. I mean, I've been talking about this for I've been talking about the game for 10 minutes. I think it's time to come up from my favorite things about the game, and I'm gonna list them off. The first would be the combat. It's very fluid and very exciting. I mean, like the web slinging in this game, it may take a little while to pick up, but once you get the hang of it and you start to learn what you can do, and once you start to upgrade as well, you add that with the upgrades you can get. It just opens up to a whole possibility of whoop asses you can do, which is really fun. It's the best thing about the game. I'd say the second best for me is the web slinging. Like I've already gone over, I can web sling for hours and not worry about it. Like just web sling because it's so fun, and it makes you feel like Spider-Man. But aside from that, the third thing would be the story, because of how fleshed out the villains are, mainly Dr. Octopus, and how the supporting characters are, like Miles Morales. I like what they've done with Miles Morales, even though he has his own unique story in the comics, where like it's between his uncle, who's a criminal, and his dad, who is a cop, even though they're both alive. Although the uncle does die in one of the comics, it's a little bit. Again, it's comics, so things can change. But what I like about the video game Miles is like it's different. Even though his dad's dead, his uncle is still alive. And what I didn't realize until I actually watched a video on YouTube on a certain mission that I already finished, and then I heard him talking to his friend. I think it was like the first time he sees Spider-Man. Like, I think when Spider-Man stops the helicopter and like suspends it between two buildings, like Miles takes a picture and he's calling his friend. Like, I think he mentions his uncle somewhere, but his uncle is in the game somewhere, in this universe somewhere. It's just I think they might be saving that for a little bit later on, because by the end of the game, Miles gets his Spider-Man powers, and I think in the coming DLCs you're gonna definitely see his uncle, because his uncle is the Prowler, which I don't know too much about. The only reason why I know he's the Prowler is because I've read the Miles Morales Spider-Man series, and depending on whatever, like there's a lot of controversy between like diversity in comics and all of that, but what I gotta say is, I'm not gonna get into it. All I'm gonna say is I enjoy some of the characters, because like with Miles, he has motives. Even like in the comics, he has motives. Even in this video game, he has good motives too. He's a good person like Peter, and like I like the dynamic that they're playing with. Like he's like the sidekick / partner. Like he's only a sidekick because he's learning the ropes, but I feel like once he becomes a full-fledged Spider-Man himself, they'll be like partners. But with that, and I gotta say, if I had to rate this game, I'd give it out of 1 out of 10. I'd give it 11, only because I'm a big fan of the comics and of Spider-Man in general, and this game with the combat is very fluid, and just how the story works, it's fun. And with that being said, I'm gonna leave you now with a couple of these screenshots. If you enjoyed, please like the video, leave a comment, tell me if you enjoyed the Spider-Man game as much as I did. I'm the Faded Gamer, and I'll see you guys next time.